You know what I think nobody tells you clearly enough when you first start selling digital products? Making one sale is exciting, making 2 or even 3 sales feels amazing. But the real question becomes, how do I actually make this start happening consistently? Because it's one thing to actually get a random sale, but it's another thing to know where your next sale is coming from. And this is where a lot of people start second guessing everything. They create the product, they post about it a few times, maybe they get a few likes, maybe they even make a few sales, but then everything goes quiet. So they start thinking, maybe my product isn't good enough, or maybe the audience doesn't really want this, or maybe digital products just doesn't work for me. But most of the time, the product itself isn't the main problem. The problem is that there isn't a simple sales system around it, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. So I'm going to be walking you through 10 things that are going to help you to make more consistent sales with digital products without actually needing to be online every day, without having to shout, buy my thing every 5 minutes, and without relying on one viral post to save you. And make sure you stick around to the end, because I'm going to be sharing the simple weekly sales routine that I'd recommend to anyone who's starting from scratch and who wants more sales and more predictability in their business. So if you're new here, my name's Jen and I'm the founder of WEN, and I help new and early stage entrepreneurs build businesses without overcomplicating everything. Right, let's jump into this video. So the first thing that I want to say is this: consistent sales are not created at the checkout page. They're actually created before someone even clicks the buy button. They're created through your content, through your messaging, through your product page, your emails, your visibility, your trust building, and also the way that you help someone understand why your product should matter to them. A lot of people think selling is just the moment where you say, here's my product, go and buy it. But actually it starts a lot earlier than that. It starts when someone actually realizes that they have a problem. It's only then that they begin to see you as someone who understands that problem. And the goal is to make them start trusting your way of solving it. The aim is always to make people believe that your product is going to help them. That is how you get them to buy. So if you only show up at the final stage and say, hey, here's my product, it can feel a little bit sudden and a little bit awkward. But if you've spent time educating them, helping them, understanding the problem and showing them why your solution makes sense, then the sales are going to feel a lot more natural. And this is why consistent sales come from a consistent customer journey. So not random posting, not hoping, not uploading a product and waiting. You need a clear path that someone takes from, I don't even know I need this, to this is exactly what I've been looking for. So let's talk about how to build that. So the first step to making consistent sales is getting really clear on the problem that your product solves. And I know this sounds obvious, but honestly, this is where a lot of digital products fall flat, because people describe what the product is, but they don't clearly explain why someone actually needs it. So for example, saying this is a digital planner doesn't really tell me very much, but saying something like this is a 30-day content planner for new business owners who feel stuck on what to post and want to stop creating content at the last minute is a lot clearer. Now, I understand the problem, I understand who it's for, and I also understand why it matters and why it should matter to me. Same with selling things like Canva template packs. So instead of saying something like, these are Canva templates, what you would say is these are Canva templates for service providers who want to promote their online offers without spending hours designing from scratch. That's the difference. People don't buy digital products just because they exist. They actually buy them because they believe that product is what is going to help them solve something, achieve something, avoid something, or feel more confident doing something. So if your sales are inconsistent, one of the first things that I would encourage you to look at is your messaging. So think about, are you clearly saying what the problem is that your product solves? Are you saying who it's for? Are you saying what changes after they've actually used it? Right, so before we move on, you need to ask yourself this: can I explain my product in one sentence? Not in a vague way, but in a way that makes someone think, oh, that sounds like something that I absolutely have to have, something that I absolutely need. Right, so the second step is to create content that creates demand. So this is a pretty big one, because a lot of people create content that is nice or interesting or even helpful, but it doesn't actually lead anywhere. So they post things like motivational quotes, which are lovely, But again, they don't lead anywhere. They post random tips. They post behind the scenes content, which all has its purpose. But if your goal is consistent sales, your content needs to regularly connect back to the problem that your product solves. So let's again use the content planner as an example. So if you sell a content planner, your content should talk about content planning problems. Whereas if you sell a pricing workbook, then your content should talk about pricing problems. You want your content to make someone think that's exactly what I'm struggling with, because when someone actually feels seen, that's when they pay attention. And when they pay attention long enough, that's when they're more open to actually purchasing your products. Right, so the first step is to stop only selling when you feel like it. And I say this with love because this is where a lot of people accidentally sabotage themselves. They mention their product once and then they just disappear. Or they post about it for 2 days during a launch period and then don't mention it again for 3 weeks. Or a lot of people assume that people are tired of hearing about it, even though most people probably didn't even see the first post. You can't expect consistent sales from inconsistent selling. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you need to be pushy. It doesn't mean that every post needs to say, buy my thing now. It means that your product needs to become part of a regular content rhythm. You need to learn how to talk about it from different angles. So this might mean one day you might talk about the problem, and then another day you might show what's actually inside the product, and then another day you might explain who it's for. And then maybe another day you might share a mistake that it helps people to avoid. That way you're not repeating the same sales message over and over again. What you're actually doing is building understanding, because different people need to hear different things before they buy. Some people need to understand the problem. Some people need to see the product. Some people need to know that it's beginner friendly or user friendly. Some people need to trust that it's actually going to do what it says and help them. And some people need to see that someone like them is able to use it. So when you sell consistently from different angles, you're actually giving people more reasons to feel ready to buy. And a simple way to do this is to create a sales content bank. So this is nothing complicated. You're just gonna write down 10 to 20 ways that you can talk about your product. So I'll give you a few examples. So this could be why I created this, who it's for, what problem it solves, what's inside, how to use it, a mistake it helps with, a common question, a quick tutorial, a customer win, a gentle invitation to buy, or anything else you can think of that might attract your ideal customer. Now with this content bank, you're suddenly not wondering what to post anymore. You've got loads of different angles that you can try, and angles are what create consistency. Okay, let's move on to step 4, which is to build an email list. So I know people hear about this all the time, but it does really matter because social media is really good for visibility, but email is much better when it comes to follow-up. And consistent sales do need follow-up. And this is because most people don't buy the first time that they hear your product or see your product. And so you need to think of social media like meeting someone at an event for the first time. And then email is more like having a proper conversation with that person afterwards. So on social media, you might be squeezed between someone's holiday photos, a trending sound, a news story, and a random dog video. But in email, you've got more space to explain, to teach, and to guide someone towards the next step. So if you want more consistent sales, create a simple freebie that relates to your paid product. If your paid product is a content planner, then maybe your freebie is going to be 10 content ideas for when you don't know what to post. And then once someone actually joins your list, you would send them a few helpful emails that naturally lead them to your product. And this is not a hard sell. This is literally a helpful journey. So for example, email 1 might be where you welcome them and help them to use the freebie. And then email 2 might explain the bigger problem. Email 3 might be where you share a common mistake or your own personal story maybe. Email 4 might introduce the products as the next step. And then email 5 might answer a question or some kind of objection that they might have that might stop them from buying. Now that's already much stronger than just posting once and hoping for a sale. And you can use tools like Kit, MailerLite, Flowdesk, or System.io for this, but don't overthink the platform. You don't need a complicated funnel to start. You just need a way to collect email addresses and actually stay in touch with the people that subscribe. Okay, so the 5th step is to make your product page clearer. Sometimes people are getting traffic, but they're not really getting sales because their product page is a little confusing. And this is frustrating because you might think that nobody wants the product, but in actual fact, people might just not understand your thing enough to buy it. So your product page shouldn't just list what's included, it should actually make the value of your product obvious. So at the top of the page, someone should quickly be able to understand what your product is, who it's for, what problem it solves, and what result that they're going to get if they purchase it. And then as they scroll down, they should be able to see things like what's included, exactly how it works, and also who it's perfect for, as well as why it's helpful, what happens after they buy it, any frequently asked questions, and a clear button to buy. You really don't want people to have to guess, because a confused person is not going to buy your product. So the 6th step is to create a simple weekly sales routine. And this is where consistent sales become a little bit more realistic, because instead of waking up every day thinking, what should I do today? You actually have a repeatable system in place that you can follow. So here's a simple example of a weekly routine that I'd recommend. So every week you want to create one main piece of content that teaches around the problem that your product actually solves. And this could be a YouTube video, a blog post, or even a podcast episode. And then you want to create 3 to 5 shorter pieces of content from that main idea. Now these could be TikToks, Reels, carousels, Pinterest pins, threads, or LinkedIn posts. And then once you've done that, you want to send one email to your email list and make sure that you mention your product a few times during the week from different angles. Now, this could look like on Monday, you teach about the problem. On Tuesday, you share a quick tip. On Wednesday, you show your product or explain what's inside it. On Thursday, you actually share a mistake or myth about the product. And then on Friday, you invite people to actually check it out. It's that simple and it's completely repeatable. And the mistake that a lot of people make is thinking that every week has to be completely different or brand new, but it doesn't. You can repeat themes, you can revisit old topics, you can explain the same product, but just in different ways. I think it's important to realize that your audience isn't studying your content as closely as you think they are or as closely as you are. And this is why they need repetition, because it's repetition that builds recognition, and then it's that recognition that builds trust, and trust is what helps to create more sales in your business. Right, so the 7th step is to use proof. And I know this can feel a little bit tricky when you're new, mainly because you might be thinking, but I don't have very many testimonials, or maybe you don't have any yet, and that's absolutely okay. So testimonials are really good, but they're not the only kind of proof. Proof can also be a product walkthrough. It can be a sample page. It can be a behind the scenes clip, a before and after example. It could be a beta tester comment, a screenshot of someone actually asking a question, or even a personal story about why you created the product. But this is my favorite one. It can also be a demonstration of how you use the product yourself. So for example, if you sell a content planner, then what you could do is film yourself planning your own content for the week using the planner. Or if you sell a Canva template, what you could do is show how quickly someone can customize one design and get unstuck in their business. Or if you sell a launch workbook, what you could do is walk the person through maybe the first page and explain how someone would fill it in. Those are the kind of things that build trust, because people can actually see your product in action. And then once people start buying, then that's your opportunity to ask for feedback. Okay, so step number 8 is to keep improving your offer. So consistent sales don't always come from creating new products. Sometimes they come from improving the products that you already have. Now, a lot of people give up way too quickly. They launch something, it doesn't sell straight away or do as well as they'd hoped, and they immediately move on to the next idea. But sometimes the product just needs to be tightened. It just needs a little tightening. Maybe the title's too vague, or maybe the product page is a little unclear, or maybe the mock-up images that you created are not showing enough, or maybe the price doesn't actually match the value yet. So before you abandon a product, you need to look at the offer and ask yourself, is the outcome clear? Is the audience specific? Is the problem urgent enough? Is the product easy to understand? Does the page show exactly what's included? Have I talked about this offer enough? Have I been visible enough? And have I given people enough reasons to care about it? So don't be too quick to throw everything away. Instead, try and prove it before you actually abandon. Okay, so the 9th step is to actually be patient enough to let the system work. And I know patience is not the most exciting advice, but a lot of people do stop way too early. They post for 1 week and then say it didn't work, or they email their list twice and say email marketing doesn't work, or they launch once and because it doesn't go well, they just assume that nobody wants it. But consistency needs time. Now, I don't mean years and years before you ever see anything, but enough time to be able to gather enough data, and also enough time to see what people respond to improve your messaging, and enough time for your audience to actually recognize both you and your product. It's important to give your product a fair chance. So instead of judging everything by one post or by one launch, you need to learn how to look at the patterns and look at the data. Which content is getting the most saves? Which emails are getting replies, which post leads to link clicks, which questions are people asking, where do people seem a little confused, what objections keep coming up. That information is really valuable because the more you pay attention, the better you're actually going to become at selling. Consistent sales are not magic. They're feedback, they're refinement, and they're also repetition. So if something doesn't work the first time, don't immediately assume that the product is bad. Instead, look at the data, tighten the message, improve the page, try a different angle, and keep going long enough to actually learn what's working. Now, if you're starting from scratch and you want a simple weekly sales plan, here's what I'd do. I'd pick one product to focus on for the next 30 days, and then every week I would create content around the problem that that product solves. Each week I'd aim to create at least one teaching piece of content, one personal or behind the scenes piece of content, one product walkthrough or product mention, one objection handling piece of content, and then one direct invitation to buy my product. I'd also be sending out at least one email to my email list every week. And I would really try to do this consistently because consistency is what builds momentum. Actually, let me ask you this. What do you think is currently stopping you from making consistent sales at the moment? Is it your traffic? Are you struggling to get people to the page? Is it your actual product page? Maybe people are coming to the page, but they're not doing anything or they're not buying. Or is it not knowing what to post or not having the confidence to sell? Whatever it is, comment below and let me know because I would genuinely love to know what part feels like the biggest block for you. So the big takeaway from this video is this: consistent sales don't come from randomly posting and hoping people buy. They actually come from having a simple system in place. You also need a clear product, clear messaging, and content that creates demand, as well as a product page that explains the value of your product, an email list that allows you to follow up, regular selling from different angles, proof that builds trust, and a willingness to improve instead of giving up too quickly. Also, keep in mind that you don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to sell aggressively, and you don't need to create a new product every 5 minutes. You just need to make the product that you have easier to understand, easier to trust, and easier to buy. That's pretty much where consistent sales start. And if this video helped you and you want to focus in on one strategy that is going to be able to get you consistent sales in your business, then I would definitely suggest focusing on lead generation. And I've created a video to walk you through the entire lead generation process so that you can generate as many leads as possible, which is going to really make a difference when it comes to generating more sales in your business. So definitely watch that video next, and I'll see you there.